This is the last video for the YouTube fire alarm ABC training. And the last thing we're going to talk about is testing, which in essence is what a fire alarm service engineer does. So, in the context of testing, as a service engineer under the British standards, we have to test a variety of things. So the main four things that you have to test when you're doing a fire alarm system are the detection. So that's all the devices, so that's all the smoke detectors, heat detectors, flame detectors, etc, etc. You have to test the panel, and inside the panel you have to test that if anything's connected to the panel that works, and you also have to test the batteries, the standby batteries, so that's 2 and 3. You then have to test how the system would work under alarm conditions, so you have to ring the bells or the sounders, and then finally you have to test if there's specific things that operate when the fire alarm goes off, and that's called cause and effects. In essence, when you're a fire alarm service engineer, you're testing 4 things. So we use lots of different bits of kit to test things. We use artificial smoke. So artificial smoke looks like this. Comes in a little can like that, and when you spray it, it's non-toxic, non-odourless artificial smoke. So that's smoke. We can also use carbon monoxide, which obviously is not ideal and not great to breathe in either, but it's not going to kill you essentially. So we use carbon monoxide, which is basically invisible. We can use that to test carbon monoxide detectors. We can use specific bits of kit. So when there's certain items that are connected to the fire alarm system, like these things here, or these things up here, we can use specialist bits of kit that will actually test those hard to reach areas. And we can also test it using smoke poles. And smoke poles are telescopic poles that we use, we put together, and then we test high level stuff. So that's testing of the kit itself, of detection and devices and stuff like that. When we test batteries, the important thing to remember is that these things are dangerous, or can be dangerous, and also quite heavy. So the only thing that's stopping this battery from falling out is the fact that I'm keeping an eye on it, but actually it's about 2 kilos in weight. So that's going to be quite heavy if it falls and lands on your feet. So when we're testing batteries, which will be shown in the practical demonstration, you have to be very mindful that these can be quite dangerous. Another danger to consider when testing batteries is that batteries produce volts and amps, and it's the amps that will cause you some concern and some pain. So there's health and safety regulations to do with battery handling, but ultimately you've got to be mindful that if you was to put a piece of metal across a live, which is a red, and a negative, which is a black terminal, then the whole thing could burst into flames. So to be very careful when you're testing batteries. When you're testing the fire alarm system, the purpose of the test is to prove that it would do what it was supposed to do in the event of a fire. For example, if I get a can of artificial smoke and test this detector here, some noises may start going off and the beacons may start flashing now. So just a few cans of a few places of smoke, then the panel goes off, and it does what it's supposed to do. So that's me proving that if there was a fire in the room and that detector was activated, then all of the things that I wanted it to do would work. So in this instance, the little light comes on, which is great. This device de-energized, releasing doors. The text came up on the screen indicating where the fire was, and we got some beacons and some flashing lights and stuff like that. And it could have done lots of other things, like call the fire brigade or turn off a gas solenoid or something like that. So when we're testing our system, what we're saying to the customer is that we'll prove that everything works. It's a bit like an MOT for a car, really. So I'll clear that down. And then we'll go from there. So when you're testing the fire alarm panel, you have to prove that everything works. and you can do. And obviously, when you're doing a fire alarm test over a period of 12 months, you have to prove that everything works. So the ultimate aim for a fire alarm engineer is to test 100% of the system. So that's all of the detectors, all of the call points, all of the bits and pieces that are connected to it in 12 months. So it doesn't matter whether it's an analog addressable panel, or a conventional panel, or a radio panel, or a hybrid panel where you've got a bit of both. It doesn't matter what you've got, it doesn't matter who makes it, or who manufactures it, or whose name is on the panel, you still have to test 100%. And we use our asset collection iPads in order to gain that information, so we know exactly what's on the system. So that's testing the devices, that's testing the batteries, that's testing the fire alarm panel, and then we over and above all, we test everything. And that's kind of it, really. There is no V, there is no W, apart from the fact we do weekly bell testing. So that's one of the things we do. There is no Y, there is no Z. And the only thing to mention about you is from ultraviolet light. So this is a flame detector. This one here. It doesn't work if you set it off with smoke or with heat, or if you cover it up. But if I was to get a match and set the match on fire, on that one, on these ones, if we get a match and we light it, now there won't be a lot of smoke that comes out of this, but the unique signature in a flame, which is ultraviolet and infrared, sets off the alarm. So there's no smoke, you can't see any smoke, but what you do is what the infrared detector sees is the ultraviolet and the infrared signature. So we can prove that this detector works using a small match, but on a fire alarm system we would use a proper bit of kit. But what it's doing is it's doing what it needs to do, it's flashing a beacon, it's setting something else off, and it's proving that everything works. Okay? Okay. So, there's lots more things to learn, but this was an introductory way of getting through the A to Z of fire alarms. A lot of this stuff comes with experience, a lot of stuff comes from reading the British Standards and the pocket guides, and most of it comes with getting on and doing the job. But the actual routine servicing of a fire alarm system is to check that the whole thing works by using different bits of kit: smoke for smoke detectors, heat detectors for heat detectors, flame detectors, and associated bits of kit for high level detection, and prove all of that works, activate the system, prove that the system does what it's supposed to do, and make sure the system is looking after the building, protecting the building, and protecting the people in the building. And that's fundamentally it. So, hope you've enjoyed the videos. See you on Monday for your 1 day of total instruction. So bring your thinking hat, bring some packed lunch, and hopefully you'll pick it up nice and quickly.